I never thought I'd be the kind of person to live a double life. But there I was, holding a truth so heavy, it could have crushed everything. My friends, my relationship, even the way I saw myself. It all started with one glance. 1 second. That one moment flipped my entire world upside down. My name's Eli. I'm 28, and I live in Austin, Texas. For almost 5 years, I was in a relationship with a guy named Jason. On paper, we were solid. People saw us and said, "You two are couple goals." We had the apartment, the matching tattoos, the Sunday morning coffee runs. We were that gay couple everyone assumed would get married one day. But here's what no one knew. We were just good at looking happy. Behind closed doors, it was different. We weren't connecting like we used to. Conversations felt forced. The passion? Gone. We didn't fight, but maybe that was a problem. Silence had become our language. I kept thinking, maybe this is what love looks like after a few years. Maybe this is normal. But deep down, I was starving for something real. Not routine. Not safety. I wanted to feel wanted again. I just didn't know that desire would lead me somewhere I never expected, with someone I should have never even looked at. It was my best friend Katie's birthday. Small rooftop gathering downtown, just close friends. The kind of night you go to out of obligation. I wasn't really in the mood to socialize, but I went anyway. It was a warm evening. The city lights glowing in the distance. Cheap wine being passed around. Old R&B playing from a speaker. And that's when I saw him. He wasn't even talking. Just standing off to the side. Sipping something dark, eyes scanning the sky like he was trying to escape the party in his head. Tall, a little scruffy, wearing a plain black shirt that somehow looked like it belonged on him more than anything I'd ever worn belonged on me. I couldn't stop looking. Later I found out his name was Noah. Katie introduced us. Apparently, he was her cousin visiting from Chicago, just here for a few days. We made small talk, the usual party stuff. But something about his voice, the way he looked at me when I spoke, it felt different, like he actually heard me. Jason showed up an hour later. I introduced them. Everything was fine on the surface, but I could feel Noah's eyes on me, even when I wasn't looking at him. And I hated how much I liked it. I told myself it was harmless, just some random attraction, a spark that meant nothing. I went home with Jason that night and tried to push the whole thing out of my head. But the thing about sparks, if you ignore them, they burn in secret. The next day, Katie texted me, said Noah wanted to grab coffee before he flew back, said he specifically asked if I want to come along. My stomach flipped. I waited hours to reply. And when I finally did, all I said was, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I told Jason I was going to help Katie pick up some last-minute stuff for her trip. It wasn't full lie. But it wasn't the truth either. I hated how easy it was to hide things. But something inside me didn't care. Something inside me wanted to know what that spark really meant. Noah and I met at this little cafe off East 6th. It wasn't supposed to be anything, just coffee, maybe 20 minutes. But we ended up talking for almost 2 hours. He told me about his job, his ex, the way Chicago winters mess with your soul. I told him things I hadn't even told Jason. It was terrifying and exciting. When we said goodbye, he hugged me, and I swear to God, I almost forgot how to breathe. That night, lying in bed next to Jason, I kept replaying everything Noah said. The way he laughed. The way he looked at me when I told him about the time I almost moved to L.A., but chickened out. Something was happening. I knew it, and I hated myself for not stopping it. But I also didn't want it to stop. A week passed. Noah flew back. Life went on, but he kept texting. Little things. "Hey, did you ever try that podcast I mentioned? This song reminded me of our convo. You ever think about just starting over in a new city?" I told myself it was innocent. I told myself I was just being friendly. I told myself I was still loyal. But I was lying. One night, Jason found one of Noah's texts. Nothing explicit. Just a Spotify link and a message that said, "This made me think of you." Jason looked at me, silent. Then he said, "Is there something you need to tell me?" And in that moment, with my phone in his hand, and that look in his eyes, I realized something. This wasn't just a spark anymore. It was a fire, and I had already stepped into it. But what happened next, even I wasn't ready for. There's something I've been hiding, something I've never told anyone. Not even Katie. Not even Noah. If this video gets to 1,000 subscribers, I'll finally reveal the truth. It's something I've carried for years, and once it's out, nothing will ever be the same again. So if you want the full story, the part that no one's heard, subscribe. Because in part 2, everything changes. When Jason asked me if there was something I needed to tell him, I hesitated. And that 1 second of silence, that was the real answer. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stared at me like I was a stranger sitting in our bed, like the man he loved had shape-shifted into someone else. And honestly, maybe I had. I said it was just a friend, that there was nothing going on, that I was just flattered by the attention. But Jason had known me for too long. He could always tell when I was giving him just enough truth to cover the lie underneath. He didn't say much after that, just nodded, got up, and went to sleep on the couch. The silence in our apartment was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I laid there for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking, how did I get here? What was I doing? Was I really willing to throw away everything Jason and I built for someone who barely knew me? Or was I just chasing a version of myself I thought I'd lost? The next morning, Jason left before I woke up. No note, no text, nothing. I wanted to call him, to explain. But what was I going to say? Hey, I emotionally cheated on you, but I swear it didn't mean anything. That wasn't true. And he deserved more than a lie coated in guilt. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Noah. It just said, "You okay?" I stared at it for 10 minutes, then replied, "No." He called me immediately, and I let it ring twice before I picked up. His voice was calm, gentle, like he knew I was unraveling, and didn't want to rush the thread. We didn't talk about what happened with Jason. Instead, we talked about anything else, the sky, the way Austin's sunsets always feel a little too dramatic for a city this small, how weird it is that we spend so much time being polite while dying inside. I asked him why he texted me that night. "This song made me think of you" message. He paused, then said, "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." I should have hung up. I didn't. Instead, I asked him, "What exactly do you want from me?" He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing on the other end, like he was choosing his words with care. Then he said, "I want to know you, without the performance, without the boyfriend, without the filters. Just you." And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Seen, not as Eli, the one half of a well-behaved couple, not as someone who always did the right thing, but as someone messy, conflicted, hungry for more. We talked for another hour. After that, it became a routine. Calls at night, messages during the day, voice notes that made me smile like an idiot in the middle of work. He was 1,000 miles away, and still, I could feel him closer than Jason, who now barely looked me in the eye. Then one night, 2 weeks after everything blew up, Jason and I finally talked. Really talked. He came home late, quiet, sat at the edge of the bed and just said, "I know I haven't been easy to love lately." That broke me. I told him I felt invisible, that I missed him, that I didn't want to fall out of love, but I didn't know how to fix what we broke. He asked if I loved someone else. I said no, and I think a part of me still believed that, because what I had with Noah didn't feel like love. Not yet. It felt like possibility, like a door I hadn't walked through, but kept standing in front of. Jason and I agreed to try, to reset, to go on a trip, reconnect, see if there was still something left between us. We booked a weekend in Denver, just the two of us. The night before we left, I got a message from Noah. It said, "I booked a flight to Austin, just for a weekend. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure I'd go through with it, but I'll be there tomorrow." My heart dropped. I replied, "You can't come." He messaged back, "Too late." And just like that, everything I was trying to hold together started slipping through my fingers. Jason. And I flew to Denver the next morning. The flight was quiet, but not tense, just strange, like two people trying to remember how to be close. We got dinner that night, laughed a little, almost kissed, almost, but the entire time my phone kept buzzing in my pocket, and I knew who it was. I didn't check the messages until later, when Jason was asleep next to me in the hotel bed. Noah had sent a photo. It was a cafe we first met at. He was there, alone, waiting. Then another message. I don't want to cause problems for you, but I had to see you, even if you don't come. I turned off my phone, put face down on the nightstand, tried to sleep, but guilt doesn't let you sleep. Not when you know you've already crossed the line. The next morning, Jason and I went for a hike. Beautiful scenery, snow on the peaks, trees that looked like they came out of a postcard. But the entire time, I was somewhere else, with someone else. And that's when I realized I couldn't do this. Not to Jason, not to Noah, not to myself. So when we got back to the hotel, I told Jason the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I told him I wasn't in love anymore, that I tried, really tried to stay, to fix it. But I was living a lie, and I didn't want to become the kind of person who keeps doing that just because it's easier. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just said, I hope he's worth it. That hurt more than I expected, because I didn't even know if Noah was worth it. I didn't know what we were, or if we even had a future. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Jason flew back alone. I stayed in Denver for a few extra days, not because I wanted space, but because I was scared to face what came next. When I finally got back to Austin, I didn't text Noah right away. I needed time to think, to figure out who I was now, without Jason, without the structure of that relationship, without the version of me I'd built for 5 years. 3 days later, I got a knock on my door. It was Noah. No warning, no text, just him, standing there, holding 2 coffees and wearing the same black shirt from the night we met. He looked at me and said, if this is too much, I'll leave. But if there's even a chance you feel what I feel, just say something, anything. And I wanted to say everything, but the words didn't come. Because I was still trying to understand something I buried deep for years, something that went way beyond Jason or Noah. It was about identity, about shame, about the things I wanted but never allowed myself to have. And that truth, I've never told anyone. But I think it's time. If you've been watching this far, if you're really still here with me, then get ready. Because in part 3, I'm going to tell you something I've never said out loud. Not to my friends, not to my family, not even to Noah. It's the real reason this all happened. And it might just change the way you see me forever. Noah stood at my door, holding coffee and hope in both hands. I should have said something, but I didn't. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt too much. It's a strange thing, getting exactly what you thought you wanted, and realizing you have no idea what to do with it. I stood there, staring at him, like my heart had run ahead but left my mind behind. He looked nervous, eyes flicking down to the coffee, then back up to me, like he was trying to read my silence. Finally, I stepped aside. Come in, I said. He walked in slowly, like the space might collapse if he moved too fast. He handed me the coffee and didn't sit until I did. It was quiet, but not awkward, just heavy, like both of us knew we were standing on the edge of something. We just didn't know if we were going to jump or fall. He finally broke the silence. I didn't mean to complicate things. I just couldn't stop thinking about you. And I didn't want to wonder what might have happened if I never showed up. I nodded, but I didn't say me too. Because this wasn't just about attraction anymore. This wasn't just about Jason or a breakup or even Noah. This was about something I hadn't let myself face. Something I buried so deep it didn't have a name anymore, just a weight. I looked at him and said, before anything happens between us, I need to tell you something. And I've never said this out loud to anyone. He leaned in a little, not physically, emotionally. His whole energy shifted, like he understood this wasn't flirtation anymore. This was a confession. I took a deep breath and said, I've never been fully honest with anyone I've ever dated. He looked confused. Not about cheating, I clarified. Not like that. I mean emotionally. I always become who they want me to be. I shrink myself to fit their world. Jason wanted stable, so I became predictable. My ex before him wanted wild, so I became reckless. I've never had someone see me, because I don't even know who I am when I'm not performing. Noah didn't interrupt, didn't look away. I kept going. I've done things cross lines, not just with Jason, with people before him. Stuff I buried. Stuff I convinced myself didn't count. And for the longest time, I thought that made me broken, or fake, or unlovable. My throat tightened. But with you, I said, I feel like maybe I don't have to pretend. And that scares the hell out of me. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he asked me something I didn't expect. Do you want love, or do you want to be saved? It hit me like a punch in the chest. Because the truth was, I didn't know. Maybe I was just reaching for someone to fix the loneliness I never dealt with. Maybe Noah was just a mirror, showing me all the parts of myself I didn't want to see. Or maybe, just maybe, this was something real. He reached out, gently touched my hand, and said, I don't want to be your escape. I want to be your choice. And that's when I realized I hadn't chosen anyone in years. Not Jason, not Noah, not even myself. I just drifted. Let life pick for me. Let other people decide who I was supposed to be. Noah didn't stay that night. He left after we talked, even though I think part of him wanted to stay. And maybe part of me wanted him to. But I needed space. For once, I needed to sit with the mess, not avoid it, not fill it, just face it. The next few days were quiet. No calls, no texts. I didn't reach out, and neither did he. I went for long walks. I journaled. I replayed conversations in my head. I cried alone in the shower, not because of heartbreak, but because I finally admitted something I'd spent years avoiding. I was lonely, even in love. I was scared of being known, scared that if someone really saw me, they'd leave. So I made sure they never got the chance. Jason loved a version of me that was always calm, always fine, always compromising. But he never saw me break, because I never let him. Noah, he showed up before I even knew I needed someone to. But I couldn't love him either, not yet, because before I could be with anyone, I had to be with myself. It sounds cliché. It probably is. But it was real. One night, I sat in my living room, alone with nothing but an old photo album, pictures from years ago, me and Jason at Pride, us at a cabin in upstate New York. Smile so why they almost look fake now. And then I found a photo of me, just me, standing in front of the lake somewhere in Colorado, arms open wide, laughing like I didn't have a single secret in the world. I barely recognized myself. I stared at that photo for almost an hour, asking one question over and over again. Where did he go? The next morning, I did something terrifying. I called my mom. Now, you should know my mom and we've had a complicated relationship. She didn't take it well when I came out years ago. We've talked since, stayed in touch, but we never really talked about me. But that morning, I told her everything. About Jason, about Noah, about the version of myself I kept hiding, not just in the world, but from her. There was a long silence on the other end. Then she said, I don't know if I understand everything, but I love you. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you ever had performed for me. I broke down, not because of her words, but because I needed them for so long and never asked. I ended that call knowing something had shifted. That maybe, just maybe, I was finally building something honest. That night, I texted Noah. I said, Are you free tomorrow? I want to see you. Not because I need you, but because I want to. He replied instantly, Tell me where. And I did. We met at the same cafe where it all began. Full circle. No expectations. No hiding. When he walked in, I stood up and pulled him into the kind of hug that says I've been through a storm, and I'm still here. He looked at me and smiled. You okay? I nodded. Getting there. We sat, talked, laughed, shared stories. No tension. No drama. Just connection. At one point, he reached across the table and said, So what now? and I told him the truth. I don't know what this is, or what will become, but I know I'm ready to stop running. If you're willing to take it slow, no labels, no pressure, I want to try. He squeezed my hand. That's all I ever wanted, he said. But just when I thought the hardest part was over, I found out something that flipped everything again. A message I wasn't expecting. From someone I never thought I'd hear from again. And what they told me changed the way I saw the entire situation. Because turns out, I wasn't the only one hiding things. And in part 4, you're going to find out what really happened behind my back while I was trying to find myself. If you thought this story was about me, you have no idea what's coming next. I was finally starting to breathe again. After weeks of emotional chaos, guilt, confusion, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fixed. But it was real. I was learning to be honest. With Noah. With myself. I wasn't running anymore. At least, that's what I thought. Until I got a message. It came late. Almost midnight. I was on my couch. Half asleep. A comfort movie playing in the background. The notification buzzed. Unknown number. One sentence. Thought you should know your guy wasn't exactly single when he met you. My chest tightened. I sat up. Read it again. I stared at the screen, my mind trying to catch up. What the hell did that mean? I replied, "Who is this?" No answer. I waited. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then another message came in, this time from a different number. A photo. It was Noah with another guy. The timestamp? The same weekend he'd flown to Austin to see me. My hands started shaking. I didn't want to believe it. My brain jumped into defense mode. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was photoshopped. Maybe there was an explanation. But I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. The same feeling Jason must have had when he saw those texts from Noah. I messaged Noah. We need to talk. Now. He replied within seconds. What's wrong? Can you come over? 15 minutes later, he was at my door. He looked normal, calm, like someone who didn't know a bomb had just been dropped. I didn't even say hi. I just handed him my phone. He stared at the screen, looked up at me, said nothing. So I asked, is it real? He sighed, sat down, and finally said, yeah, it's real. The room spun. I couldn't speak. I felt like I was watching my own life fall apart again, like some twisted loop I couldn't escape. My legs felt weak, but my anger kept me standing. Who is he? No one serious, he said quietly. I laughed, bitter, hollow. You flew across the country to see me, and spent the night before with no one serious? He looked down. It was a mistake. I paced the room, my voice rising, not yelling, just try to stay above the waterline of my own rage. You told me you wanted something real. You told me you saw me. And all this time, you were doing the exact same thing I did to Jason. Lying. He didn't defend himself, which somehow made it worse. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, why pretend to be different? He looked up, and for the first time, I saw guilt, not the shallow kind, the deep kind, the kind that eats people slowly. Because I didn't think you'd give me a chance if you knew who I really was. I swallowed hard. And now that I do, he didn't answer, because he knew the answer. I asked him to leave. He didn't argue. He just said, I'm sorry, and walked out. And the second the door closed behind him, I collapsed, not because of Noah, but because this was the moment I finally saw the pattern. It wasn't just Jason or Noah. It was me. I kept choosing people who couldn't give me what I needed, because I didn't believe I deserved it. I chased connection through secrecy. I called it chemistry when it was really chaos. I mistook being wanted for being loved. And now, I was alone again. But this time, I wasn't going to run from it. The next few days, I did something I hadn't done in years. I unplugged. No dating apps. No late-night texts. No checking stories to see if anyone was watching mine. Just quiet. Stillness. Me. It hurt. God, it hurt. But in the silence, I started to heal. I went back to therapy. I journaled every morning. I told Katie everything. And to her credit, she didn't say, "I told you so." She just listened, let me unravel in front of her. No judgment, no quick advice, just presence. And that helped more than anything. Because maybe I didn't need someone to fix me. Maybe I just needed someone to sit with me while I figured it out. Then, about a week later, Noah texted me. Not a novel, not an apology. Just, "If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. But I understand if you don't." I didn't respond. Not because I hated him, but because I was learning how to choose peace over closure. It wasn't just about forgiving him. It was about forgiving myself for believing a fantasy, for rushing into something without asking the right questions, for needing something so badly I ignored the warning signs. And there were signs. I just didn't want to see them. I wanted Noah to be the answer, the healing, the happy ending. But maybe healing doesn't look like a new relationship. Maybe it looks like sitting alone in your apartment on a Friday night with no plans, no texts, and still feeling whole. I still think about him. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we both met at a different time, with fewer secrets and more honesty. But then I remind myself, if we were meant to last, we would have. And if love has to come at the cost of truth, it's not love. I don't know what's coming next for me. I'm not perfect. I still mess up. I still second-guess everything. I still crave affection in ways I'm learning to question. But I'm done repeating old patterns. I'm done choosing pain just because it feels familiar. And I'm done chasing people who only love me in the almost. What comes next? Well, it's not what you think. Because someone from my past, someone I haven't seen in years, just came back into my life. And the truth they brought with them? Let's just say, everything I thought I knew about Jason was wrong. You'll understand in part 5. But brace yourself, because this next chapter, it flips the entire story. I didn't expect to hear from him again. Not after everything. Jason, and I hadn't spoken since the day we ended it in Denver. We unfollowed each other, split our stuff, kept it clean, mature, cold. But 3 weeks after Noah walked out of my life, Jason showed up at my door. Literally. No warning. Just him. Standing there like he hadn't haunted every thought I'd been trying to outrun. He looked tired. Not just physically, emotionally. Like life had drained something from him. Something heavy. He asked, "Can we talk?" I hesitated. My heart immediately went to panic mode. What if he was here to scream at me? To shame me? To unpack every terrible thing I did and demand some kind of closure? But there was something in his eyes. Something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not sadness, just truth. So I let him in. We sat on opposite ends of the couch like strangers who remembered too much. He didn't start with small talk. He didn't ask how I'd been. He said, "I need to confess something. And you deserve to hear it from me, not someone else." I froze. He looked down at his hands, took a breath, and said, "I wasn't faithful either." My body went numb. At first, I thought I misheard him. He repeated it. I cheated. More than once. And not just emotionally. Physically. I couldn't move. He kept going. It started about a year before things got really bad between us. Just hookups. Random. Meaningless. I told myself it didn't count because I always came home to you. My mouth was dry. My thoughts were screaming. But I couldn't speak. He looked at me again. "You were right when you said I stopped seeing you." I did. I started resenting you for stuff that wasn't even your fault. I didn't know how to talk about what I wanted. I didn't even know what I wanted. So instead, I just broke us in the dark. I asked him why he was telling me this now. He paused, then said, "Because I saw your latest video, and I realized you were never the villain." My heart cracked open in a way I didn't expect, because I'd spent so long blaming myself. I convinced myself I was the one who ruined us. I was the liar, the selfish one, the guy who hurt someone who didn't deserve it. But hearing Jason say that, it shifted everything. And yet, weirdly, I didn't feel angry. I felt relief. He apologized, genuinely, for the betrayal, for making me feel unseen, for letting us rot in silence and pretending it was love. And then he said something that stuck with me more than anything else. I think we were both trying so hard to be the perfect couple, we forgot how to be people. He was right. We had built this image. Happy, healthy, stable. People looked up to us. We were the couple other couples envied. But behind that perfect photo was a whole lot of pretending. We didn't know how to fight. We didn't know how to be vulnerable. We didn't know how to be messy together. And in trying to avoid the mess, we lost the truth. He didn't stay long. He didn't ask for anything. Just left the truth at my feet and walked away. And when the door closed behind him, I cried, not because I wanted him back, not because I hated him, but because I finally saw our relationship for what it really was. Two people trying to heal old wounds by becoming bandages for each other, and eventually bleeding through. For the first time in months, I felt free, not from Jason, not from Noah, from the shame, the weight, the lies I told myself about who I was and what I deserved. I started showing up differently, not for anyone else, just for me. I called friends I hadn't talked to in forever. Started writing again, not for a job or a post, just to hear my own thoughts. I stopped chasing love and started choosing honesty. But just when I thought the past had settled, I got one last surprise. A message from Noah, not a text, a voice note. And the second I heard his voice, I knew something was wrong. He sounded shaken, scared, almost. He said he needed to see me, that it wasn't about us, that something had happened. And what he told me in that meeting, it made everything I'd been through feel like the prologue to a much bigger storm. Because turns out, Noah had been keeping one last secret, one that involved someone I thought was out of the picture for good. And when you hear it, in part 6, you'll understand why the story was never just about love. It was about trust, betrayal, and a lie big enough to break everything. You think you know how this ends? You don't. Not yet. I met Noah at the park, the same place we sat the first time we admitted we had feelings for each other. Only this time, there was no warmth, no quiet smiles, just a cold breeze and something uneasy in his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I didn't say anything. I just waited, and after a few seconds, he finally spoke. I didn't come here to fix things between us. I'm not trying to win you back. I nodded. Then why are we here? He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, opened the Notes app, and handed it to me. It was a message, not from him, from Jason. Time-stamped 3 months ago. It said, if he ever finds out about us, deny everything. My stomach flipped. I read it again, slower. Jason, my ex, the man who sat on my couch just a week ago and admitted to cheating, claimed it was with strangers, meaningless. But this wasn't meaningless. I looked up at Noah, confused, furious, trying to piece the pieces together. What is this? He exhaled. I wasn't completely honest. Jason and we knew each other before. I didn't breathe. Like, you were friends? I asked, try to hold on to any innocent version of the truth. But Noah shook his head. We hooked up a few times, month before I met you. It wasn't supposed to be anything, just casual. We didn't even talk much after that. I could feel something rising in my chest. Anger, shock, disgust, everything all at once. And when you met me at Katie's party, you knew I was his boyfriend. He nodded. I didn't plan it. I didn't even know he'd be there. But when I saw you, I recognized your face. From his pictures, from his phone. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. I couldn't breathe. Everything suddenly felt like a lie. Not just from Jason. From Noah, too. You should have told me, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I know, he said. I almost did. 100 times. But I liked you. And the more I got to know you, the more I hated how it all started. And Jason, I asked, he knew you were texting me? Noah looked away. He found out. Around the time you guys were in Denver, he messaged me, told me to disappear, said if I ruined his life, he'd make sure I regretted it. I blinked. Jason, the man who sat across from me, calmly admitting to his mistakes, pretending like he had nothing left to hide, was threatening Noah behind my back. I felt sick. Noah stood up now, too. I'm not proud of how it started, but what I felt for you, that was real. You have to believe that. I stared at him, and the part that broke me the most, I did believe him. That's what made it worse. Because even with all the lies, the secrets, the twisted way our story began, I still felt something for him, and I hated myself for it. I walked away without another word. I didn't owe anyone anything in that moment. Not answers, not forgiveness, not grace. I went home and sat in the dark. Just sat. For hours. Because everything I thought I'd moved past was now crawling back from the shadows. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. Two people I trusted, even loved, had been lying to me while lying to each other. And I was the story between them. The silence they kept. The game piece they both played. So I did the one thing I hadn't done yet. I confronted Jason. Not with anger. Not with screaming. Just questions. He didn't deny it. Not one bit. He admitted to the hookup. To the messages. To the fact that when he saw me falling for Noah, it killed him. Not because he loved me, but because he hated losing. I didn't want him to have you, he said, even after we broke up. I asked him why he pretended to come clean. Why he acted like he was being honest when he still had this massive secret in his back pocket. He shrugged and said, because I want to control how you saw me. And if I was going to lose you, I wanted it to be on my terms. That moment, that was the end of something inside me. Not love, not pain, not even trust. It was the end of doubt. I'd spent months wondering if I was a villain in all this. If I destroyed a good thing, if I was too impulsive, too messy, too lost. But now, I knew the truth. I wasn't the villain. I was the mirror. And sometimes, when people look at you and see everything they hate about themselves, they'll do anything to break that mirror. That night, I blocked Jason. For good. I deleted every photo, every saved message, every trace of the story I thought we were writing together. And Noah, I didn't block him. But I didn't reach out either. Not because I wanted him back, but because some part of me was still learning the difference between closure and reopening wounds. I wish I could tell you this story ends with some grand moment of clarity, some perfect new love, some redemption arc. But real life isn't a movie. Sometimes healing is quiet. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. And that's what I did. For weeks, I went silent. No posting, no videos, no confessions. Just real life, therapy, stillness, and for the first time, peace. But before I end this chapter of my story, there's one more thing I have to tell you. One final truth. Because after everything, the cheating, the secrets, the chaos, there's still a part of this I never shared. A part that started long before Jason, long before Noah. A part that explains why I let all of this happen in the first place. It's the origin of the pattern. And in part 7, I'm going to tell you the truth that started it all. My first love, my first betrayal, the moment that shaped every mistake I've made since. If you've come this far, you deserve to know. Because after part 7, you'll see everything differently, including me, before Jason, before Noah, before I even knew what love was supposed to look like. There was him. His name was Micah. And he was the first person who ever made me feel seen. And the first person who ever taught me what it means to be destroyed by someone who claims to care about you. I was 19, fresh out of high school, first year in college, still carrying all the shame I'd grown up with, still hiding, still performing, still trying to figure out if the version of me people loved was even real. Micah was older, 24, confident, loud, the kind of guy who walked into a room and knew he was the center of it. And for some reason, he picked me. I met him at an open mic night near campus. I was there with a few friends, pretending I liked beer and small talk. He was on stage, reading a poem about heartbreak that sounded more like a threat than art. When he got off stage, he walked straight over to me. Didn't ask my name. Didn't ask if I liked the poem. Just said, "You looked bored. Thought I'd give you something to remember. And from that moment, I was hooked. He was chaos. The exciting kind at first. Late night drives with no destination. Phone calls that turned into 6-hour marathons. He had this way of talking that made everything feel urgent and beautiful and dangerous. It didn't take long before we were spending nearly every night together. And in the beginning, it felt like I was finally alive. He challenged me, called me out, pushed me to be real, as he always said. But it started changing fast. Little things, like the way he criticized how I talked, said I sounded too polished, like I was performing for someone. The way he'd disappear for days, then come back like nothing happened. The way he made me feel lucky just to be chosen by him. Even when he treated me like I was disposable. He never officially called me his boyfriend, said labels were a trap, but made it clear I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone else. If I questioned him, he'd flip it back on me. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things. You're just scared of something real. And God, I believed him. Because when you don't know what healthy love looks like, manipulation can sound like wisdom. I kept trying to earn his approval, changed the way I dressed, laughed at jokes I didn't find funny, stopped writing, stopped going out with my friends, started building my world around his orbit. I told myself I was growing, that this was passion, that this is what it looked like when you let your guard down. But the truth was, I was erasing myself to keep someone who never truly saw me in the first place. The breaking point came late one night. We were at a party, one of those pretentious art scene gatherings where everyone's pretending not to be watching everyone else. I was talking to a guy from my philosophy class. Just talking. Michael walked up behind me, wrapped his arm around my neck in a way that looked playful, but wasn't. He leaned in and whispered, "You trying to replace me already?" I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. But when I turned, I saw in his eyes rage barely contained. We left 10 minutes later. Didn't talk in the car. When we got his place, he slammed the door and said, "You like attention, huh?" I didn't even know what to say. I told him I hadn't done anything wrong, that I was just talking. And that's when he said it. The one line I still hear in the back of my mind sometimes, when I'm doubting myself. "You're nothing without me." And I believed it. I believed that loving someone meant taking a hit and staying anyway. I believed that I was the reason it was toxic, that I had too much baggage, that I was lucky someone like him even gave me the time of day. I stayed for 2 more months, until the night I caught him with someone else. Not because he was hiding it, because he wanted me to see, to prove a point, to remind me that he had the power, that he could shatter me with one look, and I'd still crawl back. But I didn't. I left, shaking, sobbing, alone. But I left. And that night, that's when I made a decision. Quietly, in the pit of my shame. I will never let anyone do that to me again. But here's the twist. Instead of healing, I built armor, perfection, control, being the good one, being desired but distant, keeping 1 foot in and 1 foot out of every relationship I ever had. I told myself that if I stayed in control, I'd never be hurt like that again. But the truth? That trauma followed me. Into Jason. Into Noah. Into every lie I told myself about who I had to be in order to be loved. So, if you've been wondering why I stayed in a broken relationship, why I ignored the red flags, why I didn't walk away sooner, it's because part of me didn't believe I deserved better. Until now. Because telling this story, here publicly, is the final way I take my power back. Micah doesn't live rent-free in my head anymore. Jason doesn't get to rewrite the story. And Noah, I hope he heals too. But me, I'm done bleeding for people who never learn how to hold their own wounds. This chapter of my life is closed. But the story isn't over yet. Because in part 8, something happens that I never saw coming. An unexpected letter from someone who knew Micah. And what they told me, it changed everything I thought I knew about him and about the role I played in our story. You think you know how the past ends? Wait till you see what comes next. I thought the past was over, that I'd said everything there was to say, that naming the pain was enough to finally let it go. But life doesn't work like that. Healing doesn't ask for permission, and closure doesn't always come when you think it should. It comes in the form of a letter. No return address. Just my name. Handwritten. Simple. At first, I thought it was junk. Maybe some weird promo. But when I opened it, my hand started shaking. Inside was a short note. Just one page. Folded neatly. It said, "You don't know me, but I knew Micah. And I think you deserve to know the full story. Because the version he gave you, it wasn't the truth." I sat there, frozen. I hadn't said Micah's name in public. Not on my videos. Not in my writing. That story was private, just mine. So whoever this was, they knew something real. There was a second piece of paper in the envelope, typed longer. It was a letter from a guy named Julian. He wrote, "I was with Micah for 3 years. Before you, after you, off and on, like a bad habit neither of us could quit. I knew about you. He mentioned you, said you were young, said you were intense, said you made him feel exposed and that he hated you for it. I kept reading. I watched him do the same thing to you that he did to me, break you down, make you believe he was the only one who saw you. Micah had a gift. He knew how to find people who were searching for love and give them just enough to keep them hooked, but never enough to be whole." I swallowed hard, because everything Julian said, it was like he had watched my story from the inside. The manipulation, the emotional confusion, the high followed by the crash. But then came the part that truly broke me. He wrote, "I know you think you were weak for staying. I thought I was too, but I need you to understand something. Micah wasn't just emotionally abusive. He was calculated. I spent years in therapy unpacking the damage. And what helped me heal wasn't just walking away. It was realizing I wasn't the broken one. I was just trying to love someone who was incapable of loving himself." And then at the bottom of the page, he said, "You were not the reason he hurt you. You were just the one who reflected back the parts of him he couldn't stand. And that's not your fault." I sat there for a long time, reading that last line over and over and over again. It was the first time I felt seen by someone who had never met me. Julian had no reason to reach out. He didn't want attention. He didn't ask for anything. He just wanted me to know the truth Micah never gave either of us. And somehow, that letter gave me more closure than any apology ever could. Because sometimes, the healing doesn't come from the person who broke you. It comes from the ones who survived them, too. It made me think about how many people walk around blaming themselves for how someone else treated them. How many of us convince ourselves we were too much, too needy, too intense, too emotional? But what if we weren't too anything? What if we were just trying to give love to someone who couldn't hold it? And what if the bravest thing we ever did was survive it? After reading that letter, I sat down and wrote something in my journal, something I hadn't written before. I forgive myself, not for staying, not for breaking, but for not knowing how to protect myself back then. Because now, I do. I'm not perfect. I still flinch when I feel someone pulling away. I still overthink text messages. I still check in with my therapist when my brain tries to convince me I'm unlovable. But I'm not in survival mode anymore. I'm not loving from fear. I'm not chasing people who make me feel invisible. I'm not confusing emotional intensity with safety. And no, I haven't found someone new yet. I've had chances, people who seem good, people who say the right things. But this time, I'm moving slow, because for once, I'm not trying to outrun my past. I'm learning to walk beside it, not as something to be ashamed of, but as proof that I'm still here, still healing, still showing up, still choosing softness, even when it hurt to stay open. Micah was my first heartbreak. Jason was my longest lie. Noah was the one who almost helped me find myself, but also mirrored everything I hadn't healed yet. But the most important relationship I rebuilt is the one I have with me. That sounds cheesy. I know, but if you've ever hated yourself for loving the wrong person, if you've ever stayed too long or left too late, or asked what's wrong with me after someone made you feel small, let me be the one to say it. There is nothing wrong with you. You were doing your best. You were surviving. You were loving the only way you knew how at the time. And now, You're learning how to do it differently. That's not weakness. That's growth. That's power. I didn't respond to Julian's letter. I didn't have to, because sometimes the truth doesn't need a reply. It just needs to be heard. But I will say this. There's one person I haven't spoken to yet. One person I've avoided this entire time. Not because I'm scared of them, but because I'm scared of what I might say if I see them again. And in part 9, you're going to hear what happens when I finally face them. Face me. Face everything I've kept buried. Because before I can love again, I have to make peace with the version of myself I left behind. There's this moment in healing nobody really talks about. It's not when the pain is fresh, not when the breakup is new or the betrayal still stings. It's later, when things are quiet again, when the drama fades, when everyone else has moved on and you're left with you. I hit that moment about a month after I got Julian's letter. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't replaying conversations or checking social media. But something still didn't feel whole, like there was a version of me trapped somewhere in the wreckage, waiting to be noticed. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went back, not metaphorically, physically. I got in my car, drove 4 hours out of the city, and pulled up to a place I used to hate, but always called home. My childhood town. It hadn't changed much. Same cracked sidewalks. Same tiny gas station. Same diner with the burnt coffee and the waitresses who always called me sweetheart. Even when I looked like hell, I wasn't there to see anyone. I was there to stand in front of the place where everything started. The house I grew up in. I parked across the street. Didn't get out. Just sat there, looking at the front porch where I used to sit alone for hours. Too scared to tell anyone I liked boys. The window to my old room, where I first kissed a guy and thought the world would end if anyone found out. The driveway where my dad taught me how to hide my feelings and call it being strong. I hadn't thought about that version of me in a long time. The scared kid, the quiet one, the one who swallowed every emotion just to survive in a world that didn't know how to hold him. But he was still in there. And suddenly it hit me. I've spent so much time grieving other people. Jason, Noah, Micah, even the fantasy of them. But I never grieved him. The version of me I lost just trying to be enough for people who never asked how I got broken in the first place. So I sat in that car and I let myself mourn, not with anger, not with guilt, just softness. And then I did something that might sound weird. I closed my eyes, imagined that younger version of me sitting in the passenger seat, small, nervous, hopeful, and I talked to him, not out loud, just in my mind. I told him I was sorry. For the years I spent hating him, for trying to erase him, for calling him dramatic when he was really just hurting, for turning my back on him when all he wanted was to feel safe. And then I said the words I wish someone had told me back then. You didn't deserve what happened to you. You were never too much. And you don't have to earn love by being smaller. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe an hour. But when I finally drove away, something shifted. Not a miracle. Not a transformation, just a quiet knowing that I was done running. I didn't need someone else to love me the right way to prove I was worthy. I needed me to do that. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt like I could. I started making small changes. Waking up early just to sit with my coffee and breathe. Taking myself out to dinner. No phone, no distraction, just presence. Saying no to people who only came around when they needed something. Checking in with myself the way I used to obsessively check in on someone else. I started listening to my body again. What made me tense? What made me light? What made me feel like I was betraying myself? Even in the smallest ways. And yeah, there were setbacks. Nights I missed the chaos. Days I craved validation from someone who ghosted me. But I didn't chase it. Because I finally understood something that took me years to learn. Peace isn't found in other people. It's found when you stop abandoning yourself. I wish I could tell you this part ends with some grand gesture, a love interest who comes back changed, a phone call that ties up every loose end. But it doesn't. It ends with me, alone, but not lonely. And that's the difference. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone to save me from myself. I was learning how to stay. And just when I thought this chapter was closed, I got a message. Not from Jason, not from Noah, from someone I hadn't heard from since before any of this started. And what they told me, it opened up a door I didn't even realize was still locked. Because while I was busy trying to heal the romantic wounds, there was one relationship I forgot to face entirely. And in part 10, I'm finally going to tell you about it. The relationship that shaped all the others. The one with my mother. It was a Sunday afternoon when she called. I almost didn't answer. I'd been avoiding her calls for weeks. We weren't exactly estranged, just distant. Emotionally, physically, in every way that counts. But something made me pick up. Maybe I was finally strong enough to face it. Or maybe I was just tired of running from people who were still alive. She said, "I saw your videos." My heart stopped. I hadn't told her about them. Never shared the links. I assumed she wouldn't care. That she wouldn't even try to understand. But there she was, soft voice, cautious tone, not angry, not confrontational. Just curious. She said, "I didn't know you were carrying all of that." I didn't respond at first. Because what do you say to the person who raised you when you spent most of your adult life trying to unlearn the things they taught you? I thought about all the moments I wanted her to ask that very question. Back when I was a teenager, sitting quietly at dinner, dying inside, hoping someone would notice. She never did. She was loving, sure, protective, practical, but emotionally, she was a fortress. She loved in the only way she knew how, through rules, structure, survival. And I learned to do the same. I learned to shut up when I was scared, to smile when I was hurting, to say, "I'm fine," even when I wasn't, because that's what I saw her do, over and over again. That phone call wasn't long. 15 minutes, maybe, but she said something I never thought I'd hear. She said, "I'm sorry for not knowing how to love you the way you needed." And just like that, the wall broke. Not just hers, mine too. I told her everything. About Jason, Noah, Micah, but more than that, about me. The real me, the one I buried to protect her image of who I was supposed to be. The one I shrunk to stay safe in a house that didn't have room for softness. She didn't interrupt, didn't deny, didn't defend. She just listened, and at the end she said, "I'm proud of you, even if I didn't always know how to show it." I didn't cry on the call, but when I hung up, I collapsed. Because that wasn't just a phone call. It was a release of years of silence, of all the moments I swallowed emotion because I thought it would make me weak, of all the ways I convinced myself I had to earn love by being someone I wasn't. It made me realize I didn't just learn how to love from my romantic relationships. I learned it from her, from the quiet tension, from the way she said, "Be careful" instead of "I love you," from the way she praised success but avoided feelings, from the way she taught me to hide, even when I was screaming on the inside. And it wasn't her fault. She was doing what she thought was best. She was surviving. But I don't want to survive anymore. I want to live, to feel, to let love in even when it's terrifying. And that starts with unlearning the rules I grew up with. I used to think love meant proving yourself, earning your place, never being a burden. But now I know love means being seen, fully, flawed, honest, and still being chosen. That phone call didn't fix everything, but it was a beginning. When I didn't know I needed until it happened, I started visiting her more. Not often, but enough. And each time, the conversations got a little softer, a little deeper, a little more human. It's not perfect. We still trip over old patterns. Still fall into moments where silence feels safer than honesty. But we're trying. And for now, that's enough. Because if I can forgive her for not knowing how to love me, maybe I can finally forgive myself for all the ways I've kept love at arm's length, for all the walls I've built, all the people I've pushed away, all the times I chose comfort over truth. This story started with betrayal, with chaos, with heartbreak. But here near the end, I'm realizing it was never about the man. Not really. It was about me. And the question I was too afraid to ask, what if I'm worthy of love even when I'm not performing for it? Because now, For the first time in my life, I'm starting to believe the answer might be yes. But there's still one more chapter left to tell. Because something happened last week. Someone reached out, someone I never expected to hear from again. And what they told me, it changed everything. Because maybe this story doesn't end in heartbreak. Maybe it ends with a choice. And in part 11, I'm going to make that choice. I didn't expect it. Not after everything. After the healing, the silence, the letting go. But life has a way of circling back. Not to test you, but to see if you're still the same person who broke the first time. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. Quiet. And then a DM. Simple. Short. Hey, can we talk? It was from Noah. My chest tightened the second I saw his name. I hadn't heard from him in months. Not since the last time we spoke, where he confessed to everything. Jason, the lies, the buried guilt. I'd thought that was our final goodbye. But there he was, again. And after staring at the message for 10 minutes, I replied, "Why now?" He said, "Because I finally figured out what I want. And I needed to say this with a clear heart." I told him we could meet. One time. In public. Neutral ground. He agreed. We met at the same bench. The same park. Where so many versions of our story had played out. He looked different. Not dramatically. But lighter. Like someone who'd done the work. He didn't try to make small talk. Didn't compliment me. Didn't smile too much like he used to when he was nervous. He just sat beside me and said, "I don't want to rewrite what happened. I just want to take responsibility for it." And he did, for everything. He told me he went to therapy, started working through his patterns, confronted the part of himself that got validation from chaos, the part that only felt worthy when someone else needed him more than he needed himself. He said, "I used to think love was about chemistry, but I know now real love is about safety, about honesty, about being known and still being held." And then he said it, "I still love you, but I don't expect you to love me back." There it was, the moment I thought I wanted months ago, the apology, the clarity, the chance to make a choice. I didn't speak right away. I just let the silence hold us. Because this time, I wasn't reacting from emotion. I wasn't chasing a high. I wasn't running from the loneliness. I was present, grounded, whole. I looked at him, not the way I used to, not through fantasy or longing. I looked at him for who he really was. A human, flawed, trying, and still beautiful in his own way. I said, "I believe you, and I forgive you, but I've changed. I'm not looking to go back. I'm looking to go forward." His eyes softened. He nodded, and the most unexpected thing happened. He smiled, not out of defeat, out of peace, because we both knew this wasn't an ending. It was a release. We didn't need to hold on to each other anymore just to prove it was real. It was real, messy, flawed, but real. And now it was over, not out of bitterness, but because we were finally ready to let it go. He stood up, gave me one last look, a grateful one, and walked away. And I didn't chase him, because I didn't need to. I sat there for a while. Just me, the wind, the quiet. And I thought about everything this story had taught me. That love isn't about perfection. It's not about fixing people. It's not about avoiding pain. Love is about showing up, even when you're scared, even when you're unsure, even when you've been broken before. It's about choosing truth over and over, even when lies feel safer. It's about forgiving, not to let someone off the hook, but to let yourself off the leash. And most of all, it's about coming home to yourself. I'm not the same person who fell for Jason. I'm not the scared kid who clung to Micah. I'm not the lonely soul who chased Noah through storms just to feel seen. I'm me now, still healing, still learning, but no longer hiding. So, if you're listening to this, maybe you're in the middle of your own heartbreak. Maybe you're grieving something that never got closure. Maybe you're blaming yourself for the way someone else left you shattered. Please hear this. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are not unlovable. You are growing. And sometimes growth looks like walking away with no villain in the story. just lessons, just truth, just peace. This was my story. Not perfect, not polished, but mine. Thank you for listening. And maybe, just maybe, for seeing me, because I finally do too.